Tropical Storm Cristobal weakens that has now moved ashore, but impacts will still be felt here in the United States. The updated models with a consensus beginning to form. They are up ahead here live on Track in the Tropics. A full team of meteorologists, everybody keeping a very close eye on Cristobal right now near Mexico, actually on Mexico. JB Buno here with you in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. WFLA meteorologist in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Ian Oliver in the top left. Amanda Holly. And joining us from Chicago, News Nation chief meteorologist Albert Ramon. We'll be hearing from Albert and Ian momentarily, but we begin with Track in the Tropics meteorologist Amanda Holly. Hey there, Amanda, keeping a close eye on Cristobal.
Yeah, a lot of people should be keeping a close eye on Cristobal as we head into the weekend, especially if you live along the Gulf Coast. But right now, you might be hearing the word weekends and you might be thinking this is a non-event. Well, it's weakening right now, but we are expecting this storm to reemerge in the Gulf of Mexico and regain some strength. So let's look at the latest. The latest just came in at 2 o'clock here. Maximum winds at about 50 miles per hour with that center over land. So we're still seeing those tropical storm force winds over land at this point, but it has weakened some since those earlier updates. We've got a good cluster of clouds and showers and thunderstorms, and that's where it's going to stay really for the next couple of days. We've been talking about this storm being a very slow mover, and you can see it right there. It's only moving south-southeast at 3 miles per hour. So we're expecting this storm to meander kind of in this red area right here for the next few days. This is Thursday, tomorrow night, and then as we get into Friday night, that's 3 days from now, we're still talking about this storm sitting just off the Yucatan Peninsula. So we've still got plenty of time to talk about this storm and plenty of time for things to potentially change as well. But as JB said earlier, we're starting to get better agreement among the models on where Cristobal will be going. And this is the latest track, again, from the National Hurricane Center. And again, the center of the storm could be anywhere within this red cone, but the impact are likely going to be felt outside of this cone, especially on the eastern side of this cone of uncertainty. But this line in particular is 8 a.m. Monday. So again, a long ways out still. Impacts potentially be beginning to felt there along the northern Gulf Coast, not until this weekend. That's that overall track, that 5-day cone for you, and it's got a long trek across the Gulf of Mexico. But once it emerges off the coast there and back into the waters, we are expecting it to pick up forward speed and strength. So you can see there the strength 8 a.m. Sunday, but potentially a pretty strong tropical storm. So something we'll continue to watch. The models everyone likes to look at here, we're expecting it to continue on this south-southeasterly track before it kind of curves back to the north and straight due north, headed for the northern Gulf Coast. And you can see the consensus among the models, these spaghetti models that we call them. There's a pretty tight cluster, and that's what we like to look at for some confidence. So yes, we have an idea of where Cristobal will be going here, but there's a lot of moisture associated with it, and you can see it extends all the way up into the state of Florida here. So this is the main moisture associated with the storm, but we've got an extension here that is bringing the state of Florida rain already. So we're talking about a lot of moisture over the coming days with the potential for some flooding possibilities, and as the storm gets a little bit closer, that's when we'll be talking about the potential for those wind threats. But too soon to tell and too soon to really pick up on where exactly impacts will be felt. But that's a look at satellite and radar, and again, you can kind of see the moisture extension here, but the main storm still sitting well in the southern Gulf of Mexico and over land at this point. Looking at the rainfall forecast, running this all the way through the middle of next week, this is where we could be seeing the heaviest of the rain. Like I said, the eastern side of the storm is likely going to be the wetter side with this one, and you can see we're looking at maybe up to 6 inches in some localized spots, which wouldn't be a bad thing because a lot of these areas actually need the rain. So something we're going to continue to watch as we go into this weekend for impacts along the Gulf Coast. This is a product from the National Hurricane Center. Really hard to read these lines right here, but this is a reasonable arrival of those tropical storm force winds, and not until Sunday morning are we talking about those winds arriving to the northern Gulf Coast. But if you're just joining us, this is the latest on Tropical Storm Cristobal. The 2 o'clock advisory here has weakened a little bit. The center of the storm now over land, still dumping a lot of rain over the portions of Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, but the storm at this point is going to get sheared out by a lot of the mountains that are in this area. Something, though, that we're going to be watching as it is forecast to move back into the Gulf of Mexico over the coming days.
Tracking the Tropics meteorologist Amanda Holly, thank you. And now we bring in our featured meteorologist today, News Nation chief meteorologist Albert Ramon, joining us from Chicago. AMS NWA, working in Corpus Christi and Austin and covering Harvey, Rita, Ike, and Claudette. Hey, Albert, thanks for joining Tracking the Tropics.
Good to be with you. We had the big announcement yesterday that News Nation starts September 1st on the WGN America network. It's not just going to be news, unbiased news, but we're going to be tracking weather across the country. And I think when we launch September 1st, we're going to be talking a lot about the tropics with you all.
We'll be looking for it on WGN America. Let's bring in WFLA meteorologist as well here, Ian Oliver. Ian, I want you and Albert to kind of break down Cristobal here, because we're talking about a storm that is weakening, but still U.S. impacts to be felt. And Ian, we were talking about this yesterday here on Tracking the Tropics.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, JB, to point out what we were talking about yesterday. This system has moved back on shore a little bit ahead of schedule, and we've talked at length on previous editions of Tracking the Tropics about the strengths, the weaknesses of the individual forecast models. The GFS yesterday actually had this, JB. We've talked a lot about Euro solutions. People wanted to see the Euro on social media and this and that. But this was a solution that actually did bring Cristobal back onshore in Mexico a little bit sooner. And yesterday, we were talking about some of the language from the National Hurricane Center was talking about Wednesday night and Thursday for this system moving back onshore. Hurricane hunters were in the system earlier this morning. I believe they called it about 9:35 a.m. They said, hey, the center of circulation is back on shore. This has made a landfall in Mexico. So that happened a good at least 12 hours earlier than what the thinking was previously when we were talking about this yesterday. So what we've seen already is the maximum winds come down from 65 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour. And you got to think here, Albert, as we head through the next 24 to 48 hours, that wind speed is going to continue to come down as the storm system is cut off from its energy source.
Yeah, and Ian, as you were talking there, I was just looking at the brand new run of the European model. The 12Z run is coming out right now. And a couple of interesting things to note about this is, at least in the short term, both the European model and the American model, the GFS, are pretty locked in step, saying that this is going to be impacting southern Mexico, in particular the Yucatan Peninsula. Really, for the rest of today, may not see it push offshore into the southern Gulf of Mexico until Friday evening. But one interesting thing to note on this brand new information coming in with the European that we didn't see in previous runs, may be a little bit stronger. So even though the official track still has this as a stronger tropical storm moving into the central Gulf of Mexico this weekend, I think the cards are on the table that we're going to have to at least start mentioning the at least potential that this becomes a Category 1 hurricane. Now, there's not a whole lot of difference between a strong tropical storm and a low-end Cat 1 hurricane. You're going to have the similar impacts, so don't let the verbiage scare you. But just know, if you are along the central Gulf Coast, rain is going to be a major, major factor. And Ian, another thing that we're going to have to monitor as we head towards early next week is, with these rain bands coming off the Gulf and moving inland, some quick spin-up tornadoes, tropical tornadoes, something that we'll have to keep an eye on as well.
Meteorologist Ian Oliver, Amanda Holly here at WFLA, News Nation chief meteorologist Albert Ramon in the bottom left-hand portion of your screen, tracking Tropical Storm Cristobal. Let's talk about the sea temperatures, everybody. We always talk about how intensification occurs with a storm like this, with a tropical storm or a hurricane. As it ventures north, Ian, Amanda, Albert, we're talking about a lot of warmer waters here, and that could be perhaps some of the intensification that we see?
Yeah, so those Gulf of Mexico temperature, the sea surface temperature is a little bit warmer than average, so that could play into the re-intensification factor. But, they're not temperatures that we typically see in August and September. And another note that the National Hurricane Center notes in their discussion is that it's going to be facing some wind shear, and that will limit the re-intensification process. So a lot of different factors kind of helping it and not helping it at this point.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting when you brought that up. As it starts accelerating northward towards the Gulf Coast, something's got to be pushing on it, and that's going to be creating some wind shear. The forecast going is very interesting because we always talk about the cone and not a single line, but the center of it is right along the coast of the Yucatan, the Bay of Campeche, for a couple of days now. So a difference of 50 or 100 miles west or east, how much of that Gulf moisture that it can tap into, that's going to be a big deal over the next couple of days. And I'm really curious to see what this thing even looks like come Friday
afternoon. 2 days from now, right.
Everybody?
If we look at the
Yep.
upper level weather pattern, lack of steering currents of where it is right now. That's why it's kind of hung up there in southern Mexico, causing devastating flooding. And I think Amanda and Ian, you mentioned it. There is still potential that this could jog a little bit more to the west and to the east. The exact track is not set in stone. We probably won't have a solid idea of exactly where at least the center of circulation will be until later on this weekend. But I was looking at some of the data, and there is even a little bit of an opening in the upper level weather pattern, about 20 to 25,000 feet up, that maybe this takes even a little bit more of a jog towards the west. Now, that could go either way, as you were mentioning, but I think the bottom line is if you're from the middle Texas coast to the Florida Panhandle, you're going to want to watch this. You don't want to, just hang out this weekend and not be connected. Stay connected on what the latest tracking information is going to be. And there you see the spaghetti models there. They're pretty tight along the central Gulf Coast, but there is some error that, again, this could go west or east just a bit.
Meteorologist Amanda Holly, Ian Oliver, JB Buno, and Albert Ramon joining us here from Chicago, everybody. We're going to be opening up the Facebook Live comment portion of Tracking the Tropics here. You see the hashtags that are underneath each one of our names in each corner of the screen. You see a hashtag Hey Amanda, hashtag Hey Albert, hashtag Hey Ian, hashtag Hey JB. We're going to be reading through some of the questions out of the Facebook Live comment section. What do you want to know about Cristobal? Maybe what do you want to know about the 2020 hurricane season? We're day 3. And perhaps, not perhaps, we're already at our third named storm of the season. We had Arthur, we had Bertha, and now Cristobal. Use these hashtags, and we'll be taking questions out of the Facebook Live comment section and asking them to our team of meteorologists here. Hey, Joyce Fisher with a comment here that I just want to read, and it says, well, hello, Albert. I think that there are some people who are very glad to have Albert Ramon here from News Nation. Awesome. Again, chief meteorologist up there in Chicago. Glad to have you here with us, Albert.
It's so good to join you all. We announced the team for News Nation, which is going to be a brand new primetime newscast starting September 1st on the WGN America Network. News, but weather is going to be a big part of it. Weather in primetime on cable, it's hard to find, right? So we're going to be covering tropical weather, winter weather, severe weather as it happens. So what's great about it as well is we're going to be picking the brains of folks like Ian and Amanda. We're going to be tapping into over 250 meteorologists across the company that owns us, Nexstar, and using their expertise for all kinds of different weather situations. So we're super excited about getting it off the ground in September 1st.
If Nexstar wasn't coast to coast already, it's certainly going coast to coast with News Nation. Going to be keeping a close eye on WGN America's big launch for News Nation. Very, very exciting. Getting to some of the comments here, everybody. Randy Denmark saying, hashtag Hey Amanda, do you think it's coming our way to Tampa?
You know, I don't think that at this point we're going to see that much of a shift in the track toward the east, but I do think that we have a threat for rain heading into this weekend and into early next week. We're already kind of getting, that really outskirt moisture connection, and that's going to continue. So our rain chance is elevated through this weekend.
Yeah, we got the flood watch locally.
Flood watch in effect now through Saturday afternoon.
Maria Reyna, hashtag AJB, what is really going on with 2020? Like the whole year, just the whole thing. We've talked about this, guys, on previous streams here on Tracking the Tropics and WFLA Now. 2020 has already been off to such a, really just, can we say, a terrible start. The first half of the year has just produced so many stories that you just would never want to actually see come to reality. Here we are now with the third named storm. And Ian, we were talking about this yesterday. This is the earliest, I think, that we've had the third named storm in a hurricane season.
Yeah,
right?
Which is, of course, not a record we wanted to break this year, as you mentioned. But yeah, and we also got our first Pacific storm. That's what kind of started all this. It was Tropical Storm Amanda, and that developed over the weekend.
Briefly on Sunday, just before it made landfall near Guatemala, which is also rare in itself. They don't see too many storms making landfall down there near Guatemala, San Salvador. So that was interesting. And then it kind of passed into the Gulf of Mexico, lost its circulation, got renamed with our C storm, and here we are.
That's something we should point out. Sorry about that, JB.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fact that this has been a combination event for portions of Central America and southern Mexico. But the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, they're talking about storm total rainfall in some of these areas. Local amounts in Guatemala and El Salvador, up to 35 inches of rain. It doesn't matter if it's called Amanda, if it's called Cristobal. It's just been raining for days across portions of these areas that have terrain, and that's led, unfortunately, to horrible and some deadly flooding.
Deadly flooding already.
And
down
pun
there.
not intended. I know that our social media pages these days are flooded with pictures of some of the protests going on across the country, but don't be surprised if we start to see some of the images in the video coming out of this particular region of Mexico showing just some of the devastation that they're seeing with all of this flooding. Getting back here to some of the comments here, everybody, and I think I just had it, and I might have just lost it. It was a hashtag Hey Albert comment here. And wait, there it is. Deanna McNeil, hashtag Hey Albert. Hey Albert, you're pretty popular there in Texas after having worked in Corpus Christi and having worked in Austin. Deanna wants to know, hashtag Hey Albert, looks like the Austin area will miss this.
Yeah, so if you're watching from really Port Aransas, Austin, Houston westward, at this point, you're on the drier side of the system. You see that counterclockwise spin there on the water vapor imagery. Those are winds, at least on the western side of the system, coming in from the north. That is dry, stable air. So even though we could still get some heavier squally weather, Galveston Island, the Bolivar Peninsula, Sabine Pass, it looks like at this point, with the latest data, the main impacts are going to be Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, potentially even the panhandle of Florida. Ian and Amanda, I've been kind of out of the meteorology game for a couple of weeks, moving from Austin to Chicago. I'm just curious to hear from both of you on the models, both the American model, the GFS, and the European. The last couple of runs have shown a little bit of a decrease in forward speed early next week as it approaches the central Gulf Coast. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Either way, yeah, we're still looking at, if it decreases that forward speed as it approaches the coast there, we could be looking at maybe a stronger storm, like you were talking about, a weaker Category 1 storm. But as you also mentioned that, there's not a huge difference between a storm with 65-mile-per-hour winds or 75-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah, slower track's problematic.
Yeah.
No question, any way you slice it. I'm curious with the track in the short term, as we discussed a bit, what it looks like when it emerges on Friday, what that does, all this land interaction to the structure. Does it look a little bit more like a subtropical system? Is it lopsided? Is there a lot of heavy rainfall, particularly for our area
the West Central Florida area?
For sure. What that looks like as we move
so I think
the
the next 24 to 48 hours really key to see where that center kind of wobbles, if it's over land or over the water.
We have more comments coming in here. Melinda Heavenridge, hey JB, with a heart emoji. Hello there, Melinda. Hope all is well. Lindsay Matta, hashtag you rock Albert. Albert, are you a rock star in disguise or something that we just don't know about because the amount of comments that we're seeing here for you? That's lot of love from Texas.
I'm glad people are watching. I'm glad everybody is watching. All my Texas family, friends, and viewers from South Central Texas. The other thing I wanted to mention is with that forward speed, I think we can agree on at this point, looking at the latest data, rainfall is going to be the big concern with this one. So I was looking at some of the model data just before I jumped on, and they were, upwards 7, even close to 8 inches of rainfall. And a lot can change between now and then as far as what we're talking about, the forward speed, the exact track. And there you see the cone of uncertainty. And they call it the cone of uncertainty because that center of circulation of this system can be anywhere in that red. It could be a little more to the west. That would bring the impacts of places like Lake Charles, maybe even South Texas up a bit. Could be a bit more towards the east, and that could bring up the impacts for Mobile, Pensacola, Tallahassee. So still a lot to watch, but that's why we're going to be doing these daily. And I'm so happy that I'm going to be able to even join you all this weekend. And it's not we're not about hype or anything like that. We just want to make sure that you're informed and tuned in and know what's going to happen. And beyond landfall, wherever it is, whether it's southeast Texas or out towards the east of Florida, beyond that, this could even be a heavy rain threat for portions of the Mid-South and Midwest as we head into next week. So I think we're going to be talking about this tropical storm, at least the remnants of it, later on next week for quite a while, maybe even a week from today.
And we have our sister station, WKRG, in Mobile, Alabama. You just heard Albert talking about Mobile. Ed Bloodsworth is going to be joining us, friend of the program, going to be joining us, we believe, tomorrow here on Tracking the Tropics. So we might be getting some insight as to how the Alabama Gulf Coast is going to be preparing for Tropical Storm Cristobal in the days ahead here as we track it here live on Tracking the Tropics. Another question here coming in from Lizette Napoli, hashtag Hey Amanda. Was trying to plan my son's graduation party on Sunday here in Spring Hill, Florida. Do you think the chance of rain is high? If so, what portion of the day do you see the highest chance of rain? Thank you. And I highlight Lizette's comment here, everybody, because so many people are just trying to prepare for different gatherings or different events. Now that we're starting to see things slowly get back to normal after the COVID-19 pandemic, at least here in Florida. Phase 2, as you heard here in breaking news, begins in Florida come this Friday, as per announced by Governor DeSantis. So Lizette asking about Spring Hill, Florida this weekend, Amanda.
And the Sunday forecast, right? I think rain chances are going to go up. All of these fine details we're going to have to work out over the next couple of days. Do I think that we have rain chances? Do I think that we will see rain? Absolutely. And Albert was mentioning the amounts earlier, upwards of 6-7 inches potentially. That extends all the way through west central Florida because of the widespread moisture that we have associated with this storm. Unfortunately, we haven't had a whole lot of great weekends across west central Florida the past, month or so. Memorial Day weekend, complete washout there. We could be talking about that over the upcoming weekend as well.
Yeah, you were dodging storms on the boat.
I
saw
know.
that. Yeah.
Tried to get out there, but
We love being out here on the water here. Again, we are live from our hurricane headquarters in Tampa, Florida, being joined by News Nation Chief Meteorologist Albert Ramon in Chicago, ways away, but of course a friendly face nonetheless. We can't wait to be hearing more from Albert in the days ahead. Albert, before we wrap here on WFLA, on Tracking the Tropics, your final thoughts. Tropical Storm Cristobal, and again, News Nation, exciting.
Super exciting. Yeah, September 1st is when we launched the 3-hour primetime newscast, 8 to 11 o'clock Eastern, 7 to 10 Central, 7 days a week of unbiased news, unopinionated news in prime time. You don't see that anywhere. You're going to have it on WGN America, News Nation, and of course, weather, tapping into the resources of nearly 300 meteorologists across Nexstar Nation, the company that owns us. And events just like this, we're going to be tapping into those local resources, have the largest national weather center in the country based out of the WGN Studio 3 that they're building out right now. It's going to be so impressive, and we're so excited to share all of that new technology with you coming up on September 1st. Final thoughts on this system. Let's keep watching it, right? Let's not put our guard down. I think there is still potential that it could get a bit stronger as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico by Friday evening. Of course, it's hung up in southern Mexico and still spreading a lot of rainfall in the Yucatan and Guatemala, portions of Central America, but still a lot to watch. This is the third named storm of the season on the third day of hurricane season, so we're off to a busy start, and we'll be doing a lot of these, I think, in the several weeks and months ahead, and so excited to join you all here this afternoon.
Laura Tosencoder here in the Facebook Live comment section saying Albert is definitely a weather rock star, exclamation point, and Amelia saying hashtag Albert rocks. Hey, a lot of love here in the Facebook Live comment section here, live on Tracking the Tropics, everybody. For meteorologist Ian Oliver, Amanda Holly, I'm JB Buno, and News Nation Chief Meteorologist Albert Ramon in the bottom left-hand portion of your screen. As a reminder, we are here to educate, inform, keep you and your family safe as we track the tropics. Of course, the name of the program here, our live stream that's going to continue every day this week at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central Time. And, of course, we always are ready to go live with breaking developments. If Tropical Storm Cristobal becomes a Cat 1 hurricane, as we mentioned is a possibility here earlier on in the broadcast, we'll, of course, keep you aware by going here live from our hurricane headquarters in Tampa to keep you informed. For Ian, Amanda, Albert, I'm JB. Thanks so much for being with us. More to come in the hours and days ahead on Tropical Storm Cristobal and the 2020 hurricane season. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.